Hi, everyone. I'm Mike, and today I wanted to speak with you about Velociraptor. I wanted to go through a few examples of how we can use Velociraptor in a real DFIR case. You must have heard of Velociraptor. Velociraptor is a unique DFIR tool that gives you, the user, the power to be very flexible about the way that we collect artifacts or information from endpoints. And the thing that makes it really cool is that it has this very powerful Velociraptor query language. And I'm going to show you today how we can use that to do some advanced hunting. So it's a very short talk, so we're going to go and skip a lot of the information, but there's going to be some references at the end so you can have a look at some more information about this. So let's just take a quick look at the overview. What does Velociraptor look like? So it's an agent-based system where we have an agent running on different assets. And we have the Velociraptor server. Usually it's deployed in the cloud. And the admin UI, which is what we're going to be using today, we can use that to task and control the server. The nice thing about it is it has persistent communication to the endpoint. So we don't really have to poll or anything. We can just go ahead and query the endpoints interactively in seconds. So I'm just going to go through a quick tour of the Velociraptor UI because I'm not going to show you guys how to install it because we have a lot of references about installing it already. But I just wanted to just point out that it's a very fast, very efficient, scalable system. And typically, we're looking at about 10,000 endpoints on one server. So it is actually pretty efficient. We can do some very, very fast hunting with that. So let me just show you a quick Velociraptor GUI tour. Let me switch to the UI. So this is the Velociraptor UI once you have it installed. And the first thing that you can do is you can search for different machines. Let me just show you the sidebar here. The home page is the dashboard. We'll just have a look at the dashboard here. And you can see that I have this server running for a while. And this is the memory usage of the server, just a bit of monitoring. And this server has about 2,000 clients connected to it. We're going to do some hunting in just a minute. What I will do is first I'll show all the machines. There's a whole bunch of them and it just goes on for ages. But we can actually search for specific machines by label. So we can label a machine and we just kind of highlight it here and add a label. And that allows us to kind of group machines into groups so we can hunt in a more targeted way. I have a machine here, which is my machine here, which I've labeled as Mike. The label's Mike. So let me just find it. Let's label it. Label Mike. Okay. I'll just show you on another machine. Let me just quickly have a look here at the dashboard. We've seen that. Yep. And we can investigate individual clients interactively. So let's just pick a client. And so this is just some information about this client. If we have a look at the VFS, we can actually go and interact with files on the machine. So we can, go through. And at the moment, this is just showing us what information the server has on this machine. So we can just refresh that by clicking that. That just syncs that directory listing so we can see what's on there. We can also do a recursive directory listing and see a whole bunch of files and on that machine. And we can go in and download individual files or whatever right from that machine. So when we look at a file, let's say end user dat, this one, we can simply click collect from client, and then it just collects that file from the machine, and then we can look at it. Let me just stop that. Okay, so I'm just going to go through that part very quickly because I wanted to show you guys an example of what we actually use. I just wanted to show you quickly the interactive shell feature that we can actually go through, and we can get a shell on that machine at any time. So for instance, in this case, if I wanted to know what are the local users on that machine, I have a little PowerShell little PowerShell snippet here, I can simply paste that here and collect that. And that just basically runs the PowerShell on the machine, and we get back the responses. So, in this case, this particular PowerShell just tells us what the local admin users are. So we've got this, yeah. Okay, so let me go through. And so we've seen how we can fetch files and interact with the machine. But what's really cool about Velociraptor is because we have that query language that we can use to really customize the way that we are actually interacting with the machine and querying things. I just wanted to show you an example of what we call a forensic artifact or a Velociraptor artifact. And we use that term a lot, and you'll see that a lot in the documentation of the artifact, the term artifact. So when you look here in the UI, we have our artifact viewer, and you can just click on any of these artifacts randomly. You'll see that these artifacts are essentially just queries that are packaged up inside a YAML file. I'm not going to go really into details about the query language itself in this talk, but you just need to know that these artifacts are just queries that are named, so they have a name. And so we can actually just use those queries and just ask the endpoint about them at any time. So just to give you an example of how useful it is, having these artifacts in the YAML form allows us to interchange them and share them with the community. So I'm just going to go through an example, a really quick one. And this is just something that I just put together in the last few days because it's actually like a current 0-day, that at the time of recording, at least. It is the Serious Sam or Hive Nightmare example. So let me just go through that. And you can see that there is a CVE for it, and there's an advisory out. And, we can have a look at, the different resources. There are many resources that explain this vulnerability. But essentially, what this vulnerability is, if you read the details, is that there is just a weak permission on the SAM file. So if you look at it, the built-in users group has read permission on the SAM, on the directory where the SAM is contained. And that allows low privilege users to just read the SAM, crack the hashes, and escalate to domain admin from there. So it is actually quite a serious vulnerability. And so you might have, a whole bunch of machines, and you can say, oh, well, how do I fix that? Well, you can see the advisories, and Microsoft has released an advisory about it, and we need to check the ACLs. But how do I do that to 2,000 machines? How do I check that, 2,000 machines are patched or whatever? So this is where a query language really shines, right? The idea is that I could write a query right now and run it on all my 2,000 machines, and then see the results in seconds, right? So, let's have a look at at our public artifact reference, which is a public place where we can share these kind of artifacts, these queries. So this is our website, our documentation website, and we have a thing called the Artifact Exchange. The Artifact Exchange is a place where we can change information about current threads, and people can write different queries, different artifacts that we can share with the community. So most of the time, you don't really need to be able to write your own VQL. You can just have a look at the Artifact Exchange to see whether there's something similar. I mean, you see we've already got something here, but the one that I just wanted to show you today was this access control list artifact, which is which basically uses PowerShell to get the the ACLs of the SAM the SAM files, right? So I'm not going to go again into too much details here, but all you have to do is really just find the artifact that you're interested in, and then you just copy it from here. And then we're just going to go back to our server into the artifact viewer, and we're just going to paste that artifact into our server, right? So this is very simple. We just click the plus button here, highlight, delete, paste, and that just pastes the artifact from the Artifact Exchange. So you could just directly use it. I mean, if you can pretty much see that that's the first part. That's the PowerShell script, a very small PowerShell thing, and then we wrap it in VQL, and then we do some filtering there with extra processing, right? So it's a pretty straightforward approach. But now when we save it, then you'll see that we have a customized artifact. It's part of the UI, part of Velociraptor, and we can just use it in any context that any of the other artifacts can be used in. So let's go back to our machine. Let's see if we can find it again. Yep, so this is my mic label, right? So this is the machine here. And now I'm just going to look at that one machine here. Over here on the top, I've got the name, the host name of the machine, and it says connected. So it's now connected to the machine. So we don't really poll, we are directly connected to it. So when we task it, we can immediately get information from it. So I'm just going to go to the collected artifacts, and Velociraptor just deals with artifacts. That's all it knows about. So this is a list of the artifacts that are collected. When we first start, we collect this information, general information artifact. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to click this plus button here, and we're going to collect that new custom artifact that we've created, which is the access control list. So I'm just going to select that. I can search for it first. And it again shows me a bit of a description of it, reminds me about it. But you can see that there are a couple of parameters here that I can use to customize this artifact that I've got from the artifact exchange. So I'm just going to configure those. And you can see that I can change the glob. So I can, check for other files and access controls. In this case, I'm interested in the SAM specifically. So it's going to be in this directory with an S star. And this is the ACL filter that I'm specifically looking for. I'm only interested in files that have that permission, that filter. So because this is the vulnerable permissions. So once I do that and configure it, then I can just launch it and off it goes. So this is going to go to the endpoint, to that endpoint, and run this PowerShell thing. And then it will come back with a result that would just be all of the, see, it's finished, and it's uploaded 4 rows. So just like Velociraptor is a query language, really queries only just return rows. Let me click on the results, and we can see here that it's showing me the SAM. This is the owner administrator, but these are the ACLs on it. And you can see that this is the kind of problematic ACL here. So this machine is vulnerable to this Hive nightmare 0-day. So that's cool. And so I could do that, and I'll show you in a minute how you can do a hunt over thousands of machines and find that out in which ones of your machines are vulnerable in seconds. But now, what am I going to do about this? I mean, okay, so I know this machine is actually, so this is just a bit of a recap to show you just the general structure of this VQL query and how we adjusted the parameters, and we could see the vulnerable thing. So what are we going to do about this? This machine is now vulnerable, so we actually really need to remediate it. Now, I mean, of course, we can always log into that machine and use our remediation steps. And in fact, if we look at our references, there are some remediation guides. And particularly, we need to run this command here. But this command, we can do that to 1 or 2 machines, but we want to really be able to do it to many machines. And this is where Velociraptor can really help us, because we can just change this VQL to add that extra command here, that extra remediation step, and then we can use that to remediate that machine. So let's give that a try. Okay, so this is the remediation step. And what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our artifact here. And instead of, we can now customize that. So the one that we copied from the artifact exchange is good. It just tells us about it, but we want to change it. So we're going to just click the pencil button here to customize it. And what we're going to call it is, remediate. For example, we changed the name, so it's going to be a different artifact, but it's very similar, right? Like essentially the same thing, except we're going to add that thing here. And what we're going to do is we're just going to let me just check this format, what it was supposed to be, out null. Okay, so this one basically just runs it without without any output, because we don't want to mess up the JSON that we are extracting, right? So we're just going to, as extra step, run this extra remediation step, and then we're going to look at the permissions. So hopefully that will show us that the permissions have been fixed after we do this. So we're going to save this. So now this is the remediation step. And I mean, generally we want to be very careful when we're doing remediation, because we don't really want to mess up the system, right? But let's have a look. So so we're going to do a new collection. I'm going to collect this new one. This is the remediation one, and we're just going to launch that. So it's doing the same thing, except it's going to do that extra PowerShell snippet to just clean up the machine. And then hopefully, once we finish, we should see that that users one disappear. So let's hopefully it worked. Let's remediate it. Oops. Sorry. Let's check that again. And hopefully that would have worked. So this gives us an idea of how we, oh, it's still there. Maybe that remediation is not working too well. It should run the remediation step. Maybe it's, let's see. Oh yeah, that's right. Sorry. This remediation is not for PowerShell, so we're just going to do this Windows System 32 config. Yeah. Okay, so let's do the remediation one. We can copy it again and launch it, run the same thing, but with the modified one. And this time we should expect to see that command worked. And yeah, it returned 0 rows. So it actually worked correctly. And there's no more results. So now if we do that access control list check again, so we just copy that same artifact, collect it again, second time, and then it should return 0 rows because now we have no vulnerable SAM. The SAM is no longer vulnerable, right? So it doesn't have that ACL on it because we've fixed it, right? So again, we have to use the correct PowerShell version of the of the fix. But once we do that, we just edit it to PowerShell and it just goes off and does it. So we can now do a hunt to remediate all of these machines. Okay, so that was pretty cool. So let's have a look at the second example. And this one is a little bit more involved, and it basically uses a bit of research. So in this second example is about disabling log files. And you might not know that you can actually download things in Windows using the bits downloader. That's a pretty common, this one's a pretty common persistence that a lot of people use, right? So attackers use. So here's an example of a command line, and it uses something called the BitService, right? So the BitService is used to download the Windows updates and various other updates, but essentially it's like curl, basically. It goes off and downloads stuff from the network. Now, if you have something like an EDR that watches to see, you know, oh, is there a PowerShell connecting out to the network? And it could be suspicious. So a lot of attackers use this Bits admin to download their malware because Bits admin is part of Windows, and it's usually whitelisted and signed. And so it goes off, and a lot of EDRs just let it go because they don't monitor what exactly it's downloading. So you can actually use it to download anything, including, you know, any PowerShell or whatever you want as a download cradle. So let me just try to do this as an example. So we'll just open up a shell. And what we're going to do is we're just going to download, let me just put it in mic test. Okay, and if I just run this command, then it's going to go and it's going to create a bits job and goes off and downloads this google.com into C users mic test.ps1, right? So that is what it went off and downloaded that now. So this is actually kind of suspicious thing, and a lot of people know about this. So usually you actually can monitor for that using the event viewer. So if you look at the event viewer, then often you will see an event, and the event is in Windows Bits clients operational, right? So you see the event, and this is pretty suspicious. A lot of people have like event forwarding, and they forward that to their SIEM, and and then there's alerts and all this kind of stuff, and it escalates, right? Because this is actually pretty suspicious. When you look at this event, you can actually see who downloaded it, the username, and you can also see in one of the other events where it was downloaded from and who created it. So you can see this is the URL that we downloaded from. This is what they downloaded, And that would set off a lot of flags if PowerShell is coming from the internet. So, but I'm not going to talk to you about this bits thing because it's well known. What I am going to talk to you about today is this very interesting thing that a lot of people don't realize is you could just turn the logs off. So if I right click on this, and if I just disable the log, like so, very easy. And if I just clear this log, I'm gonna clear this log and do it again and show you that now the log is not logging, right? Because the log is disabled. So if I had an event forwarding type sim that I'm just going to, forward events from this, then I'm just now completely blind. And all it takes is you just right click on this thing and, it just disables the log. It's not a big deal, right? And so, if an attacker is about to do this, they're just, they can do that. They can disable the log and off we go. So what we would like to know as defenders is like, has anyone done this? Has anyone disabled the log? What was the baseline? What should it be the baseline? So the first step is figuring out, what is going on when I disable this log. And when I disable this log, what happens is that, so let's say if I don't know what it is, so usually I would just run procmon. So I have procmon over here, and I would start it up and then just, do this disable log business. Maybe I'll just re-enable it again now, enable. And then I can stop procmon, stop capturing, and I can add a filter. I've already added a filter here just for this talk. The filter is looking for an operation, which is a reg set value. So basically when I change this in the UI, something is going to set a value somewhere in the registry, and I don't know exactly where. So I'm just going to see filter for those. And you can see very quickly that when I turned the event log on or off, disabled it, then you'll see a particular key somewhere here, which corresponds to that setting. Where is it? Here, this one, right? So this event is a Windows current version, WinEVT channels, Microsoft Bits client. So this is a typical example of somehow the attacker is misconfiguring the system, and we want to know what's going on, right? So we want to write an artifact here that just detects this across our system. So let's have a look at this example. So this is the example I have here. So we did this. We looked through. We checked about the disabling. We did procmon. We checked this value, and in the end, we can write an artifact to check for that key, that specific registry key. And again, in this talk, we don't have a lot of time to be able to see to work out how to write this query. So I'm just going to paste it. So we can actually run this query as it is and create an artifact from it. But let me just show you what that query looks like. We're just going to run the query in the UI. So in the UI, we have a thing called a notebook, which we can create a new notebook here, test. And in this notebook, we can write any VQL that we want. We can run different VQL. So let me create a new cell, VQL cell, and paste. Again, I'm not going to show you how to actually write this in this talk because there's not enough time, but you can see that here's the registry key that we are looking for. There's a globe here, so there's a star. So we're looking at all the events, all the logs, and then looking to see whether they're enabled or not. So we can run this query, and what it will do is it will basically show us which query is enabled and which query is disabled, right? So we can actually write this artifact using this query to know which event log is enabled, which event log is disabled, right? So so let's do that. So we'll write an artifact. So this time we're going to create an artifact out of this query. So just like we did before, but this time we're going to create a new artifact. So we're going to go to the artifact viewing, the artifact viewer, and we're going to add a new artifact. But remember, before we just copied it from the artifact exchange, but now we're just going to write our own artifact. So we just need to give it a name. So it's going to be a Windows event log enabled. I don't know. We just give it a name, description, and so forth. But really, the most important thing is to paste our query here. Oops. And because this is YAML, we have to kind of like tab it over a bit. And you see, as soon as I do that, the syntax highlighting helps me. Here I have the preconditions. So that's telling me that it's only, this artifact is only running on Windows. So I'm just going to delete that. And I don't really want any parameters here. So I'm just going to just do that. So that's my new artifact. I just create that. And there we go. We have a new custom Windows enabled, event log enabled artifact. So now we can simply collect it from our endpoint, right? So we can simply go back to our endpoint, collect that artifact just as we did before. Remember, there's no parameters this time. So we just hit launch and off it goes. And that's going to tell us basically which clients are, which logs are enabled or disabled. Here we go. So the same thing. So we've gone from an observation of something weird's going on. How do we hunt for it? And then we create an artifact for it. So this is the standard workflow in Velociraptor. It's the hunting workflow. So we start off with an idea. We explore the idea in our VQL, in our queries. Once we come up with a query that we like, then we simply convert it to an artifact, and then we can go hunting. This is the part I wanted to show you right now, is how we can go hunting for this. So what is normal? And if you look at the event log, you'll see that a lot of them are enabled, a lot of them disabled, and you don't know which one's supposed to be enabled that's not enabled, which one's supposed to be disabled that's not disabled, right? So what you want to know is whether one of them has been changed, but you don't know what's normal. So if you don't know what's normal, that's called baselining, where we need to get a baseline of what's going on. And in order to do that, what we want to do is we want to collect this information of all the logs that are enabled, all the logs that are currently disabled, from all the hosts. So we want to do a hunt. A hunt is basically when we go through and we collect that same artifact, this one, across the entire network at once. So at the moment, we've just collected it from this one machine here, the mic machine, but we want to do it across the entire network. So let's, just for the sake of argument, let's have a look at this log. So this log here is enabled, right? So that's enabled. Let me just quickly check my other machine here. And this is my other machine. This is the Mike's machine. And I'm going to disable the log just on the one machine. So I'm going to see like this is going to be the one that stands out, right? And let's go and do a hunt and see which one is disabled. A lot of machines are enabled. This log is enabled by default, but we're just going to disable it. So we're going to go to the hunt manager. This is the hunt manager. And we're just going to create a new hunt. So we're going to add another artifact. We can give it a description. So, event logs, select the artifact that we want to collect. So it's just this one, whether it's enabled or disabled, and literally just launch it. In this case, because there's no parameters, it just goes ahead. When we create the hunt, it's paused. So we're just going to launch, start it, run it. And you'll see that as soon as that happens, the endpoints are starting to get scheduled. And they're starting to, that number will increase as they're getting scheduled. And each one is going to go off and check its event logs and send back the results. And then it will be finished, right? So it's going to be scheduled and then finished. And that goes off. And this is basically how we go off and hunt through all our machines, right? So whilst this is happening, this, we don't really even need to wait for it. It's going to be, we have like 2,000 machines on this system. So it's going to take a couple of minutes, but we can immediately start and analyze the results. So this is the processing step in the notebook, and the notebook is where we can write different VQL and we can analyze the results. So you see, for example, this is the results that came back from this machine, 87, and it has some zeros and ones, but we don't really know which one is valid or not. So we want to basically just do a group by. We want to do a stacking. We want to stack all of our results and then see which ones are different. So, what we really want to do is we want to do a group by, and then we want to count, right? Count as count, and then we have the log, all the different log, and the value, right? And the host name. That's the host name here. And then what we want to do is we want to group by the combination of log and value, right? So group by basically counts together all the unique ones of the same value combination. So if, for example, this bit client operational is 1 on one machine, and then it's 0 on another machine, that's a different group. So we want to do that, right? So so then when we do that, so it's going to go off and essentially just count them. And this way we will be able to see which ones are common and which ones are not common, because they'll sort of stand out. This is a pretty classic hunting technique called, stacking, where we can just counting different things, and we can see that some machines are a bit different to other machines. It's going to take a couple of seconds. While it's doing that, let me just jump onto the presentation to just see what we're doing here. So again, what we've done is we've done a stacking exercise across all the groups, and we counted all of them. Oh, we should have also ordered by a little bit, but maybe we'll find when we order by, we can see the count, in order, so we can see the ones that are a bit different. So that's going to take a couple of seconds while it's collecting the data from the endpoints. But typically, this is what you see. You'll see that one machine that has it disabled, so the value is 0, it stands out, right? And then the other ones are all the same. So that's more or less the baseline. And then that one is the one that stands out. All right. So we only have a couple of extra seconds, so I'm not going to show you how to do this, but I'm just going to tell you how we can turn that artifact into a detection rule. And this is a little bit of a more advanced use case, I would say. And in VQL, you can actually create event queries. So you can actually write monitoring rules that use the query to detect when something happens in the future. And this is kind of what it looks like on the endpoint. We have the query running, and it basically ends up sending partial results as it happens. I'm just going to skip to the architecture. So we can see that event queries are running on the client, and then they're getting buffered, and they're sent off to the server when the client is back online. So we can write a query that simply detects whenever this log file is changing. And this is an example this is an advance over the typical OODA loop. In a normal EDR type SIEM system, you have basically a whole bunch of events that are going into the SIEM, and then we have escalation, and then it goes back through, and then the user, an operator, actually goes back to collect extra information. But we can actually do that on the endpoint by simply adding a query, an event query that runs through it. So to give you an example, in this case, I'm just going to skip through because we are out of time. We can add this particular event artifact to Velociraptor that will simply check whether the event logs are enabled or disabled periodically. And when they become disabled, then there'll be a difference, and the event will, and the query will basically report a row that will be different. So an event log has been disabled. So I think we're out of time to actually demonstrate that particular one. So we're just going to just show you a screenshot when that happens. Basically, once we install that artifact here, then we will see whenever someone added or removed an entry from the event logs from the registry key. So whenever the registry key changes, we will see on the server an event raised. And so that's how we can turn VQL into a monitoring type system. So we didn't cover a lot of stuff. It was really quick, a really quick talk. So I do encourage you to go and have a look at all the resources that Velociraptor has. So there's many, many things that we didn't cover. And we only just introduced it. So hopefully this will give you a bit of a taste to see how you can scale up DFIR and be able to collect information from thousands of machines in seconds. And then in the last slide here, I have a whole bunch of references here, but really docs.velociraptor.app is our website. It's if you go there, there's lots of resources here. We've got training packages, announcement, documentation, and the artifact exchange. You could use that to submit to it and so on. It's an open source project found on GitHub. You can visit us on GitHub, file issues, and also we are always on Discord, so help out any questions or anything like that. So thanks for your time, and have a good conference. Thank you.